to the Better Together podcast. I'm your host, Kyla, and today we are going to sort of expand on my last topic, which was sort of about, it was updates, but like also reconnecting with yourself. So we're going to expand on kind of how you reconnect to yourself, what losing yourself looks like. But before we get into that, I'm going to read my Journey to the Heart entry. So this is called Tap into Life's Energy. Life is not something separate or apart from you, as you once believed. There is a power, a life force that moves, guides, directs, and inspires you. You are one with life, with life's energy. Do things that energize you. Change your soul. Soak up the sun. Soak up color. Soak up beautiful sounds. Immerse yourself in nature, in a world that refreshes, restores, and renews. Don't worry about the task or the day that looms ahead. The work and love and play, the problems and choices that are on the way. If you energize yourself, restore yourself, the power to take action will come naturally, like water from a spring. Look around. What do you see that feels right to you? That feels right to do? Which direction do you see as the right way to go? Trust the smallest glimmer. Give into the urge, to the guidance that's there. Do it once, do it again. Soon you will find yourself in harmony. You will have all the guidance, energy, ideas, creativity, power, and ability you need to do all you're meant to do, and you will be given the power to enjoy it. So I like that entry because it kind of relates to what I'm going to talk about at the end of this podcast, which is how you re-find yourself. Also, I'm sorry if it's loud. I feel like it's kind of loud right now because I record right next to my window, and I feel like my window doesn't block out a lot of noise. So if you hear stuff in the background, that's probably what it's from. And I live in New York, so anybody who doesn't live in New York, it's very loud here. Okay, so let's talk about losing yourself. This can happen for many reasons, and I think it can be hard to define the actual moment where you start to lose yourself, because it's really just an accumulation of moments and events and situations that happen that kind of build up to realizing that you lost yourself. So it's not one thing, but multiple things. And this can be from external pressures like family, relationships, careers. Basically, whenever you start living for someone other than yourself. It can also be from internal pressures, like having self-doubt, fear of change, and lack of confidence, where you start to prioritize others' needs over your own until you don't really know what your needs are anymore, and where you even start to not recognize your own self. Things that can cause you to feel external pressures or internal pressures that make you lose yourself can be from major life shifts and changes in your life, like ending a relationship, losing a loved one, career burnout, losing your job, or just a big career shift in general, or just feeling unsatisfied in your job and moving to a new place and starting over. So I thought I would talk about when I started to lose myself. And I'm trying to think back to when I started to lose myself, because I think it's hard, again, to look at a situation closely if you're still in it. It's sort of like you need that outside perspective of the situation, of yourself, to really be able to see things in a clear way. And for me, it was a couple of major life changes that happened in the span of, or that happened over a 4-year span, which I didn't even really realize until the last few months, since ending my relationship. But in the last episode, I talked a little about the constant questioning in my head and this need for some sort of change, whether it was in my relationship, job, moving. I just needed something different. And if I am taking a moment to really think back to this sort of longing, I guess, it started after my brother Alex passed away. I actually remember coming back to New York after staying with my family for about a month back in Michigan after Alex's passing, and just feeling this emptiness inside of me. And I'm sure this feeling is probably pretty normal after losing someone suddenly and traumatically, or just after having a major loss in your life of a loved one. But I just felt like there was a void inside of me. And I don't even know how to describe this feeling, but it was like the world was ending and life wasn't going to go beyond life that existed with Alex. So I explain it like this. There was the life before Alex passed, and then the life after Alex passed. So I remember talking about this with my ex-partner at the time and saying to him, I just felt like I needed some sort of change. And I didn't know what that change was. I just needed something different. And this was also during the height of the pandemic. And at the time, I was living in a tiny studio apartment with my partner at the time. And there were moments of living in that space where I just felt like I couldn't breathe, like I was suffocating a little bit. And eventually I came to the conclusion that I needed my own space to grieve, and to grieve the loss of my brother and do it independently. So I moved out of my apartment that I was living with my partner at the time. And I ended up doing a summer sublet at this apartment that was in the same neighborhood. And what I realized is I ended up wasting a lot of money, because what I also didn't realize at the time was that my attachment and my codependency to my partner at the time was so strong. And that was because I was, still going through the grieving stages, and was clinging on to him as a life source, really. I would rarely even spend time at my new apartment, and I would end up sleeping over every night there and spending most of my nights there, and most of my time just with him, because I could not detach, but I just felt like I couldn't be by myself, even though I was seeking some sort of independence and some sort of change. And I now see that probably wasn't the healthiest, and I also don't think that moving was necessarily the answer to my problems at the time. And I actually think that choosing to leave was actually just me running away from my problems at the time and not really confronting them head on. So eventually, after that sublet, I ended up moving back in with my ex-partner, and I never really did the work to take the time to understand what I was going through, to really take the time. I mean, I grieved, don't get me wrong, I grieved. I just didn't take the time to really understand what these feelings meant to me, and what I didn't know how to experience them. I was just kind of living within. I was just trying to survive, really, is basically what it was. I was in survival mode. So I didn't take the time to understand what I was seeking for and understand the change I was seeking for specifically. And I think ultimately it ended up manifesting in different parts of my life. it ended up manifesting in my relationship and my satisfaction with work and this constant longing, like I mentioned, for something new and something different. And over time, I started to have these major life questions swirling around in my head all the time. And I was asking myself, am I happy in my relationship? Am I, is this the career I want? Am I in the place that I want to live? Do I want to settle down? And I also felt a lot of societal pressure to settle down. I'm in a place where I'm starting to see my friends get married, and I I want those things. I want to get married and have kids eventually, and I started to think a lot about my timeline and when I was going to do these things, and this is the age I should have this done, and this is the age I should do this thing. And that wasn't just, getting married and having kids, but like in my career and the money I made and all of those things. And I felt a lot of pressure, especially as a woman. There is sort of this timeline when it comes to that. And knowing I wanted those things. And I feel like in turn, I ended up putting a lot of pressure on myself and a lot of pressure on my relationship that was honestly very unnecessary. It caused me to push my partner in ways that maybe he wasn't ready. And in the process of this longing, I started to give up really important pieces of my own self. I've always been a pretty independent person. I like to constantly be working on a personal project or doing something creative. I love traveling to new places and meeting new people. And I noticed that I wasn't doing these things as much. I also started to isolate myself more, spend less time with friends and family. And I felt like at times I was putting all of my energy into my relationships, or I felt like at times I was putting all of my energy into my relationship and trying to build this life that I thought I wanted. And for lack of a better word, I felt like I was allowing myself to settle for something less than what I wanted and something that wasn't completely satisfying me, or making me feel whole, is really what I should say. And that caused all this questioning and ultimately led me to make the decision to end my relationship. And if I'm being completely honest with myself, I didn't have this realization until I was out of my relationship. So I've only started to really think about these things in the last, few months. But when you are out of something and you have time to think and see how things are and how things relate out, you kind of have the space to be like, oh, okay, well, this is why I was feeling this way, or this is why I was feeling this way. And you can't really do that until you're out of it, I guess. So, yeah, I see these things in hindsight now, but I didn't at the time. And I say this because I want to re-emphasize that it's very, very difficult to see a situation for what it is when you are actively in it. And you don't really have that outside perspective. I think, in fact, you really need that outside perspective to kind of take the step to make a change. And I also mentioned this in my last episode, but that's also why I personally took a step back from this podcast. I needed to take the time to experience the things that I was experiencing before I came on and, was talking about some of this stuff. And I just didn't feel ready, one, to talk about it. And I also didn't feel ready to share personal anecdotes about my life without, kind of being in my feelings for a bit. So there's that. So let's talk about refinding yourself. That's losing yourself. This is now finding yourself. So, a big question to ask yourself is to help you understand how you lost yourself, or if you've lost yourself, is who were you before you felt lost? Or, and maybe lost isn't the right word, but maybe feeling some sort of longing, or having constant questioning in your head. These are all small things that can lead to that lost feeling, or feeling stuck, trapped. That was also a major theme, is this feeling trapped. So if you feel lost, I think it takes some self-reflection and awareness to figure out where you got lost along the way, and who you were before. So I've talked about this with my therapist, and something that she has had me do as an exercise is thinking about a time where I felt more like me, where I was asking myself questions about, what were you passionate about before? What made you happy before, in the time that you felt less loss or felt more whole in yourself? I think journaling can also be a really good way of working through some of these questions to help you become more aware of yourself, and ultimately come back to yourself. And some journaling prompts can be, I feel more like myself when, or if I had no fear, I would. I think it's really important to go back to doing the hobbies that you used to do when you did feel like yourself, and force yourself to say yes to things and do things that are different and new, even if you're not feeling motivated to do the thing. It's important to do things by yourself. It's important to experience, to just do new things, new hobbies, to experience new things, and to do them alone, and to have an opportunity to meet new people outside of your circle. But also, it's important to do things with your friends as well. So a mix of both. Balance is important. But something I try to think about a lot is thinking back to when you were a kid. And when you were a kid, there was no pressure to be good at something, or to have hesitancy to try something new if you were curious about it. So trying to reconnect with your inner child is really important, and to not put pressure on yourself to be good at the thing you want to try, and to just do it and force yourself to do it. Also, changing your environment and your routine. Trying new things comes with breaking out of that autopilot, out of your own autopilot mode, and making intentional choices. This could be, instead of going home after work and picking a new spot to explore, whether it's a park, a bookstore, a restaurant, maybe even trying to meet new people, going to that event or social function, like I said before, that you wouldn't normally say yes to. Self-reflection and therapy. I think it's really important in times of feeling lost to ask for help, whether that's in friends and family, or even seeking professional help. Now, I will say professional help isn't always the most affordable, but having the awareness that you are seeking help or need help is invaluable. And that can be in finding a self-help book that helps you understand and connect with your feelings of external influences and internal influences and beliefs, and being able to go back to trying to understand why you feel lost in the first place. And letting go of guilt and fear. This is, I think about letting go of guilt and fear a lot. It's maybe one of the hardest parts of coming back to yourself again. Change is not failure. Change is learning to give yourself permission to grow and to evolve. And it's also realizing that the right people in your life are going to support that evolution. So I'm currently trying to refine myself, and reconnecting to yourself takes time. It doesn't just happen right after you make a big life change. It comes from experiencing the hurt and the pain. And it's sort of like a phoenix rising from the ashes. And as cliche as that sounds, I know, that's exactly what refining yourself feels like. It's the hard decisions that cause you the most pain that teach us the biggest life lessons. So for me, I'm just trying to take it day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute, and I'm first and foremost allowing myself to feel whatever comes up. So if I need to cry, I cry. If I need to laugh, I laugh. If I need to scream, I scream. For a very long time, I allowed myself to hold back on those feelings, and what I was not expressing what I was internally feeling, and I was blocking a lot out. And that took so much effort and energy to do, and it is so much easier to just allow my feelings to flow as they need to flow. I'm also saying yes to more things, like I said, and experiences. I try to hone in on my friendships more, and I'm naturally a very extroverted person. So a big thing for me is meeting new people, and I'm just dispersing my energy in ways that are just for me and that fulfill me and that feel good to me. I'm working on personal projects that make me feel fulfilled. And yeah, do I think I feel like I fully refound myself? Probably not just yet, but I'm still at the beginning of this journey, and I know it will take time to heal and to feel whole again in myself, but I know to give myself the grace and to explore and be curious about these feelings, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I think that it's just a ever evolving, ever changing process that you have to be patient with yourself, and things will feel good again, even if you're in a place right now that feels really, really shitty. Know that those feelings are very, very temporary, and we have a billion trillion feelings in every single moment, and they're ever changing, and things will feel good again. They just will, because that's how life works. But I'd love to know I'd love to know where you guys are at in your journeys, and are you rediscovering yourselves? And if you are, what caused you to lose yourself in the first place? And how did you find yourself again? Thank you once again for tuning in. Please remember to rate, like, comment, subscribe. It helps tremendously. And you can follow me on my personal Instagram, which is Kyla_Milberger. You can follow me on the podcast Instagram, which is the_better_together_podcast, and you can send in questions and comments to thebettertogetherpod@gmail.com, and everything is linked below if you need help finding anything. And I will see you next